Hey everyone, it's Aesah, and welcome to my video on new items in 14.5. If you haven't heard yet, there's going to be a major item overhaul in the next patch coming in a few days. So I want to give my initial thoughts on some of the item changes, as well as hopefully give you guys watching the video basically some framework about how I think about items and how you can think about items to make the best decisions with them in game. So Redemption is being changed to Spirit Visage. This is basically because I'm getting this from Mindful One's Twitter, by the way. But anyway, Redemption being changed to Spirit Visage. This is basically because they want to get rid of kind of support craftable items. Redemption was an item where ideally you would have like three items on your main tank and then a secondary tank with redemption behind it. This is a little like counterintuitive, and basically craftable items have kind of just gone out of the way of this role. Before it was like Chalice, Zeke's, a lot of these were basically moved to support items. So Redemption still fulfills the same role. It's going to be scale with missing health, percent missing health. So this is going to be really good on units that can survive for a very long time. Um, so this could be like Bruiser Cho'Gath, a really strong Leona, for example, with 4 Vanguard. And then potentially like some rerolls, like a Braum 3 might be good with this as well. Next up is Ruin's Hurricane. So Ruin's Hurricane's always been a little bit of a weird item. It's kind of hard to mentally have a framework for like how good this is. So it's being changed to Kraken's Fury. Pretty straightforward. This is basically the AD version of Ginsu's Rageblade. It scales with how much you're attacking. So this is gonna be really good on champions that attack very quickly. Units like Vayne, whose ultimate will probably give them 3 stacks, like it used to do with Rageblade. Um, and then units like Zeri, who or just like any rapid fire unit basically, but Zeri in particular, I guess, just being Exotech and rapid fire, which are both attack speed traits. Um, it'll probably be good with Ogma as well, he is a rapid fire unit and gives himself an attack speed steroid. So basically, yeah, units that attack a lot and also use AD. So it's not going to be as good on something like Twisted Fate, for example, because attack damage scales with your base attack damage, and Twisted Fate's base attack damage is not very high. So it's not, yeah, it's not like a flat about like it used to be a really long time ago. You have to make sure that the unit is an attack damage user. So Static Shiv being replaced with Voice Staff. This is a pretty similar item. It's still the magic resist reducing item. So the main difference is they put a little bit more power in the base stats. So instead of giving 15 AP, it gives 25 AP. The 10 AP is equivalent to 1 rod. That's about 1/7 of the total value of the item is 10 AP. That may not sound like a lot, but it's actually pretty significant in terms of wanting to put it on your primary carry. So basically, compared to Death Cap, which is 50 AP and 15% damage amp, you can see the stats here. It's not as much AP, but you get this shred ability, so it's a little bit more appealing to put on to your primary carry, just because it has 10 more AP. That being said, it is still weaker than like this is still better on a support item. If you somehow have 4 backline AP items and Void Staff is one of them, you would want Void Staff on your secondary carry while your 3 other items are on your main carry. That's the same thing with Stack Shiv right now. I think Shiv has like some really weird positioning requirements where it shreds 4 enemies, but it's not super clear like which 4 they are, especially if you don't play the game like uh live and breathe TFT, you know? So Void Staff just makes it a lot more straightforward what units are getting shredded so you can control it more reliably. So I think this is a great change. But yeah, because it has 10 more HP, again, may not seem like a lot, it's going to be slightly more appealing to put on your main carry. If not, you're going to want to put it on an area of effect off carry that you can make sure is shredding your primary target. Again, this is only for 3 seconds, so it's a very, very short amount of time. But this could maybe be something like Varus next to your Vex in the Vexotech comp, or maybe on Ziggs close to your brand. Keep in mind it will shred off their auto attacks, so this is a little different um, than some of the previous items. So yeah, as long as they're kind of auto attacking the same target, you'll always get that shred, even if they're not casting every 3 seconds. Next, Rageblade. So this is a really it reads like it's a lot bigger change than it is. So basically, Rageblade would kind of scale off itself once you get into the fight. You're already attacking super fast, so that you're stacking it super fast. It also scales off itself, where double Rageblade was really good, or just units that synergize really well with Rageblade was really good, like Vayne or Rapid Fire. The new Rageblade, I actually think, is generically a little bit stronger with 7 attack speed per second. Just because, first of all, it's 7% instead of 5%, and most units don't attack once per second. So you usually start off attacking less of this, but you stack more. You won't stack as much later on into the fight because, as I was saying, once you have a ton of Rage Race slacks, you're attacking super fast, so you're stacking it super fast. Basically, the main purpose of this change is to make Rageblade a little bit more usable by a wider variety of champions, whereas this old Rageblade wasn't really good if your champion had like a long cast animation, for example. The new Rageblade, even during their cast animation, they'll be gaining stacking attack speed, so it'll just be a little bit more usable by more different champions. But the champions that are really good with like double Rageblade are going to be a little bit worse. Overall, I actually think this item's going to be stronger. Mortdog made a really good YouTube video. I think if you just Google Mortdog Rageblade, that will kind of show a side-by-side comparison of both of these. Yeah, I would say for the most part, you don't have to treat the new Rageblade differently. You could just use it pretty similarly as you would use the old Rageblade. Because the same champions who are going to want to attack a lot, like Aphelios, they're who just want to. This is still basically the best item for, hey, I have a champion, I want a lot of attack speed on this champion. Next up is Sterak's Gage. This is, along with Rageblade, these are the only 2 items that I think didn't get renamed. Like all these other ones got renamed. It's because they're pretty much function pretty similarly. In fact, like if you didn't even read the patch notes and you just kept playing the game, you might not even notice these were replaced, the Rageblades. I would say the same thing with Sterak's Gage. If you didn't even read the patch notes, you might not even realize these are a little bit different. But basically, I would say the biggest difference is it gives all the AD up front, and it only gives the defensive at 60% health. So I think this is going to be a lot better for champions who don't initially proc Sterak's Gage. So this could be something like Zed, who putting the old Steraks on Zed was a little bit risky because if he didn't take any aggro at all, you would only be getting 15 AD instead of 50 of the total AD. But now Sterak just gives you 40 up front, which is a pretty respectable amount compared to just say Deathblade. Gives you 55 AD and 10% damage amp. So of course, the new Sterak's not giving quite as much as Deathblade, but in return you get a lot of survivability. So I think this basically just makes the item less confusing, whereas with the old Sterak's Gage, you kind of need it to be like, okay, well, I need this unit to take aggro, otherwise they're only getting a sword and a half instead of 5 swords worth of offensive stats. So again, I think this is a great change. It just makes the item way more intuitive to use. That being said, for the current set in set 13, there are just not a lot of good Sterak Gage users. Nefiri with Trenchcoat. I mean, this will be a little bit better on Zed, but it's not going to be amazing still. Just because Zed has a lot of his survivability from Slayer Omnivamp. He drops aggro every cast, so just dealing a lot of damage with Zed is kind of the best way to build him, as that'll just translate into survivability. But more so, you really just care more about dealing damage. He's pretty survivable just by the nature of his existence. Rengar, maybe this will be like okay on Rengar, but I would say kind of the same thing with Rengar. Rengar gets a lot of her survivability from his lifesteal that you build on him. Normally you're going to want like Bloodthirster and Justice, and his ability also gives him a lot of flat healing, which is really good with Titans because the armor and magic resist kind of scales multiplicatively with that flat healing and the high amount of HP he gets from Street Demon. I think Sterak's will like not quite be as good, but you can build it in a pinch. And you can probably just use it as a makeshift tank item if you absolutely have to. You're going to lose a lot of value compared to building something like Warmogs because a lot of the item budget is in this 40 attack damage. That being said, if you have to build it on like a Cho'Gath or like a Shyvana 3, it's going to be okay. I guess Garen is another user that can use Sterak's, but overall pretty niche item for still. I mean, it's pretty much the same item. Guardbreaker. So Guardbreaker is really different. It is not based on damaging shields anymore. It's based on reliably critting. So you really want to pair Striker's Flail with other critical strike items. Basically, you really want high base crit chance so you can keep this stacking damage amp as long as possible. This is going to be good with like Executioners, for example. You could use it perhaps in the Vexotech line where you just have Executioner so you have high crit, or you can pair it with other crit items if you have like Infinity Edge plus Striker's Flail on a unit. Okay. So these are new artifacts. Flickerblade is basically the old Rageblade. It also gives stacking attack damage, so it's kind of like a 2-in-1, which makes sense. As an artifact, it should be more exciting than a craftable. So you're going to scale up infinitely with attack speed. It's also at a much higher rate than the old Rageblade. It's actually a little bit closer to Radiant Rageblade, which is 10%. So it's like, it's somewhere in between regular Rageblade and old Radiant Rageblade. But you'll also scale up in AD. So this will just be like a really fun item where scaling in AP as well. So it'll just be a really fun item where you're scaling up into the late game. So you'll just want to pair this with a lot of frontline. If you have Flickerblade, you're going to want to prioritize frontline augments over backline augments, just because the longer the fight goes, the more likely you're just going to win with this item. So you treat this pretty similarly to old Rageblade. It's just going to be a little sharper because it's an artifact. So it could be used on Zeri or Twisted Fate or any of the other old Rageblade users. Zzac Shiv. So this one kind of has the damage portion of the old Zzac Shiv, but it doesn't have that magic resist shred. But this seems just really similar to Wits End to me. This is basically just going to be AP attack speed unit. So to me, this is basically Twisted Fate only. I'm kind of drawing a blank on what other units this might be good on. Yeah, because to me, this is only good if the holder has high attack speed and high AP. I can't think of any other units other than Twisted Fate right now. Maybe there's something I'm forgetting, but yeah, that's kind of it. Basically, I mean, you know, let me just see like whose Wits End is good on, for example, and maybe that'll give you some ideas. Yeah, like most of these units are actually just AD units, like Renekton, Renekton, and Zeri. I guess it could be used on like Adaptive Strikes Jack's Hero Augment, for example. That could be pretty interesting, but it's pretty hard to get a Hero Augment and an artifact. But if you're in the spot for it, hey. But yeah, there's just are not a lot of AP attack speed units in this set, so maybe a lot of these item changes are in preparation for next set. Indomitable, this gives stun immunity, so it's kind of like Silvermere, but only gives tank stats. I don't have too strong feelings about this one. It feels like a pretty generic tank item to me. You would basically just take this in spots where you would take Anima Visage, for example. Because it gives no offensive stats, I'm pretty sure you're going to want to put this on your pure tanks like Leona, Cho'Gath, um, maybe Sejuani. Basically just like your main tanks. I would treat this similarly like you would to a Warmog's Armor, a Steadfast Heart, Anima Visage. It's definitely a little bit more fancy, but it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't seem because it gives no offensive stats. I don't really feel like you're gonna do much else with it. Maybe there's something fancy you could do about putting it into backline and then pulling their units into your backline. I'm not really sure. Titanic Hydra. So this one deals area of effect damage and is based on their auto attack. It also gives a lot of HP. 300 HP is quite a lot of the power budget of the item. It's probably maybe like 30% or so, maybe a little bit less, like 25% of the power budget of the whole item. So I think you're generally going to want to put this on frontliners. It also scales off their max health. So yeah, just frontline AD holders. This could potentially be like Rengar 3, potentially Neferi 3, potentially like Jarvan 3. Um, I guess it could be on like a Z2 or a Garen 2, but it doesn't seem quite as good on those units just because 3-star units tend to have so much more HP. It is auto attack units, so it's probably not Neferi or Jarvan that much. Yeah, I'm not really sure there's that many good units in set 13 that can use this. Because it has to be a melee auto attack based unit, which I think there's just not that many. I guess Renekton. Renekton is probably the best user. He actually gives himself max HP, so he has some synergy here. Uh, yeah, probably not Kobuko because it gives attack damage, and Kobuko has really low attack damage. He does magic damage with his hits as part of his ability. So I guess like to me, this item is basically Renekton only. It's hard for me to imagine it being good on many other units this set, but once again, these items are kind of designed with future sets in mind as well. Alright, that's going to wrap it up on the video for new items in set 14.5. However you think about these, you can kind of extrapolate anything you learned in this video, not for just these exact items and who they're used on, but also kind of how to think about items and what units to put them on. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the TFT coaching Discord. Thanks for watching.